on ALC201.
The first impressions of where it is now is that it kind of gives a lot of power back to people to, comfortably share themselves in that way. I think it's creating a more healthy relationship with sets, but it also puts people in danger when they share it with people who aren't necessarily as awesome as they are. And I think there's kind of two cultures around it where stuff is getting stolen and shared without permission, but there's also a culture around people wanting their stuff to be reshared, retweeted, resnapped. And so there's that kind of culture that I've seen building. So I think that's really interesting.
So do you think there needs to be a law change, like might be coming up in the relatively near future, that stops young people who might send that automatic, not thinking too much sext to someone and to prevent them from being a criminal, be criminalised?
Yeah, of course. Why wouldn't you want that not to happen? I wouldn't see why anyone would, because it's morally, I don't think it's right.
I was really shocked about that because I always presume that the jury is informed and they care about the case. But Deb said that, they didn't really want to be there and, they were willing to go into the jury room and just go, yep, guilty. But in fact, they weren't willing to look at the evidence. And that shocks me.
If I asked you for what your definition of a journalist is these days, what would that be?
I would define a journalist as someone writing about something, really. I think it can be as broad as that. Anyone can be a journalist these days. In the same way, all of us are social commentators as well. We all have opinions, we all express them, and sometimes they're not always correct, and neither are journalists.
And what about social media? That wasn't involved with Deb's case?
Not with this case, but in other higher profile cases it has been a massive issue. The recent Gilmar case, that was all over the news. And you can't make juries not look at the news, not look at Facebook, integrate it into our lives. So how are we getting a fair trial if the jury are constantly exposed to social media, to TV?
Hi there. Thanks to those people who helped out with this week's meLecture and to all those people who came along to the field trip yesterday. It was an amazing day, and it's only in large part due to your participation that it was the success that it was, so thank you so much. Thank you also to people such as David Prince, our Holocaust survivor, who came along and spoke to a few different groups, Grady Hancock, who stayed all day helping out with the organisation and running the events, and also Deb Waterhouse-Watson, our guest lecturer, for coming along in the afternoon too. I do plan to put together a highlights video so you'll be able to get a bit of an insight onto what happened if you couldn't make it. I will do that in the hopefully very near future. I have no idea when I'll be able to get around to that, as some other things have to take priority, such as some teaching and research deadlines, and I've got a couple of committee meetings by the end of the week. One of which I thought I'd mention, I have an agenda to read of over 330 pages. Just thought I'd mention that in case you think the reading I'm giving you is too much. Hint, hint. You may have also noticed on Cloud Deakin that I've given a short blanket extension to all students in the unit for the Module 2 exercise. This is to provide a safety net. People will have trouble uploading their videos, embedding their videos, publishing their blog posts, and it provides a safety net so that you're not going to lose heaps of marks, hopefully, for technical issues that arise. It is not designed to allow you to start the assignment later. Please do not treat it like that. If you haven't already started this exercise, you are far behind. I strongly recommend that you do so very, very quickly. A key concept for this week is gamification, a phenomenon that is absolutely fundamental to contemporary media industries and will only become more and more important to the way in which we live our lives and society generally as we move into the future. Drawing on Rethinking Gamification, a collection published in early 2014, gamification has been conceptualised as a specific practice undertaken by particularly corporate entities for advertising and public relations purposes, or, more broadly, a general process in which games and playful experiences are understood as essential components of society and culture, and I would add here, and learning. This broader definition, the second one, is what I'd like to operate according to here. You may not consider yourself a gamer, so to speak, and I've noticed that most students I've taught tend not to see themselves as one, but make no mistake, The broad notions of play and gamification are absolutely pivotal to understand. The idea of engaging people through play in order to enhance their knowledge and understanding is not exactly new, as any trip to Ridley Scott's Believe It or Not museum on the Gold Coast will show you. This is something I went to as a child, and still has a lot of the same things when I went there in 2013.
Welcome aboard! Welcome aboard! Bring up me hearties, yo-ho! Don't give a hoot! Drink up me hearties, yo-ho! Sing the song! Sing the song! Yo-ho! Yo-ho! A pirate's life for me! Yo-ho! Yo-ho! A pirate's life for me!
And I've seen some very different efforts to engage the attention and interest of students since I myself was an undergraduate student at Deakin University's Warren Ponds campus from 2001 to 2004. Such strategies reveal the concept of gamification to be pivotal to your lives, perhaps without you even knowing it. To do something a little bit different this week, I thought I'd give you a broad survey of some of the global trends I've seen in the intersection of digital media and museums. And I'm going to do this by narrating a PowerPoint slideshow. I hope this isn't going to come across as like when your boring old uncle returns from overseas and wants to take you through all of his holiday snaps, as the examples I'll show are from my trips around different places. But I think they'll give you a lot of insight into some of the key issues we're looking at this week. I should also acknowledge that I tried to do this in a seminar in an interactive way with a group of students, recording the audio of a discussion. And unfortunately the quality of the audio recording, due to the wind outside on one side and the noises of adjacent rooms on the other, really wasn't up to scratch and I couldn't use it. So I apologise to those students and thank you for participating. By doing so, you've actually helped me distill some of the ideas I want to get across here. But this also raises an important point for your own making of media, including the making of a video. Don't expect to know the quality of the footage until you're able to review it afterwards, and you may need to go back and redo some things. So I'm going to start from what might seem to be a slightly strange position and address the intersection of digital media and museums by approaching it from the perspective of a little bit of scholarship done on the future of TV documentary. And David Hogarth reflected in his 2006 book Realer Than Real on what is the future of TV documentary, and he wrote that the most likely scenario is some form of enhanced multimedia delivery that will change the way documentaries are produced, put together and viewed at home or elsewhere. At the same time, interactive technologies could extend and deepen modes of engagement to provide a range of extra textual and ancillary spaces that recruit documentary audiences and could even enlist viewers as part-time producers who shape text through voting and other sorts of audience intervention. And just to relate some of these ideas, it's really interesting to think about some of the questions that Hogarth raises about documentary and the future of documentary, such as what direction might documentary take in the digital age, will the genre continue to be attached to a particular medium, and so on. If we transpose the term documentary and a couple of other words from these various questions in Hogarth's book with museums and different terms relating to cultural heritage, we get very interesting questions arising here too, and you can see the same ideas are really relevant. So what directions might museums take in a digital age? Will the museum continue to be attached to a particular geographical location? What new types of production and pleasure will museum exhibits entail? How will museums' traditional objects of representation, the physical artefacts we commonly associate with museums, evolve? Will historical artefacts retain their status as objects of representation? Will they be needed at all? Will physical museums give way to virtual digital models? And we've already got virtual tours and virtual museums popping up around the globe. Will museums continue to exist at all? So let's go around the world for a bit. I had a huge dinosaur fetish as a child, so I'm going to take you through a few exhibits first of all, and that were very close to my heart when I was growing up, and I'm sure that many of you find them pretty interesting yourself when you go into museums. And you can see that the number of screens with different degrees of interactivity in the Melbourne Museum is really impressive these days. Far different, far more pervasive than when I was a kid. It's very interesting in the bottom right image here how you've got the physical fossilised eggs related, or at least joined directly by a screen showing more information about what that entails. So you've got that interesting connection between the physical artefact and the virtual representation. What's really interesting with this photograph here, and what's really important, and you'll hear more about this from Jane Josem later in the meLecture, is that if you've got a blank screen, they're not going to go and see a staff member and say, can you please reset the system or get a technician in. You've lost the viewer or the visitor pretty much straight away. Here's a really interesting virtual representation of the physical exhibit itself, and it says here you can touch an animal to find out more. I mean, it's an interesting idea. Touch a kangaroo to find out more. If you touch a kangaroo in real life, you find out that it beats the shit out of you. But what's really interesting here is that you can explore and get further details from the virtual media. You've got the use also of the space and the way in which virtual representations on walls, on ceilings and so on can be used, the ways in which spaces are used in a quite innovative way in the Melbourne Museum. What I really love about this image, it's not entirely random, it's basically set on a timer. Every now and then a little critter scurries along the floor at your feet, so it's really kind of an immersive environment is what they're trying to capture here. And speaking of immersive environment, museums try to construct an immersive experience outside the screen, and they're often doing that more and more through the use of screen media. And what I did in 2013, I went through with this very ordinary looking little digital camera here, and I took a quick video of this sea exhibit, and we'll have a look at that now.
Under the microscope we can see there's many different catalogue there. Separate them, keep them clear. But here are examples of many different sources we've looked at, many different types of presentations. Colour is what? It's
So you can see here with the use of digital screens which kind of evoke ideas of an aquarium, and the noises, the ambient noises that are issuing from various speakers around the space, and the interaction between the screens and the physical artifacts itself, you've got a very immersive experience that can be potentially quite effective.